So what does it mean when we say, let's, healthy lifestyle, or if your doctor recommends, yes, just, practice a healthy lifestyle. What do we mean when we say that? Because I think that that's sometimes said very, very loosely, but maybe we want to talk about more specifics, like what do you mean by that, doctor? And I think it's important to really communicate that with your patients and your doctor and get a good idea of what we mean by that. So when we talk about physical wellness, we talk about our diet. What are the things that we eat? What are the things that give us nutrition? Sometimes we forget that food is really such an important part. Many doctors see food as medicine, and some cultures see food as medicine, and they use food and plants as medicinal properties. So we want to use food that really nourishes us and gives us what we need to maintain a healthy balance of our bodies, our homeostasis, our blood, our muscles, our tissues, our nerves. It's also really important when we talk about exercise. One of the most important tools that we can use and we recommend for our MS patients is getting regular exercise. And sometimes patients ask me, Doc, what kind of exercise should I be doing, or which is the best? And what I always say to that is whatever you think that you're actually going to do, right? If I tell you, oh, you should ride a bicycle or walk or swim or go to yoga, and you don't enjoy doing those things, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to stick to a routine. So I recommend anything that you feel that you enjoy that will get you moving for 30 minutes a day. Smoking, I think, is something that every physician is going to tell you to quit smoking, no matter what disease process you have, even if you don't have any disorders or diseases. No one should be smoking. We have multiple literature, lots of data showing how terrible it is for you. But for MS, we have specific data showing that patients that smoke, their MS gets worse at a faster rate, they progress quicker, and they become into the progressive phase faster than those MS patients that do not smoke. So it's incredibly important that if you do smoke, not to quit immediately. It's very important. And we can provide help with, different therapies, etc., to help you quit smoking because it is a challenge for many patients. Consistent preventative care. So what does that mean? So when we have a condition such as MS, it's really important that we take care of anything else. So what I tell my patients is we already have a condition that is affecting our brain and our neurons and our brain tissue. So we want to be able to make sure that there's nothing else that can be contributing to our brain health. So if you have diabetes, tight control of your diabetes. If you have high blood pressure, tight control of blood pressure, cholesterol, and sleep disorders that can be preventing you from getting good night's sleep. Anything that can potentially cause damage to your brain, you want to try to avoid, because these are preventative things that we can do. You can modify these risk factors. Maintaining positive relationships. Sometimes, life is very stressful. Right now, things are going on in the world. You turn on the news, you're going to see negative things, toxic things. The world can be, toxic. So you want to really try to have somebody that you can talk to, maintaining positive relationships with your friends, your coworkers, maybe your family, and also seeking help if you need extra help for counseling, behavioral therapy, etc. And, preventative care is important, making sure you don't have any of these diseases that are modifiable. But if you do have medical conditions, also making sure that you keep up to date with your appointments with your physician. Next slide. So when somebody says exercise, sometimes it's difficult for some of us to exercise, right? We might be limited by devices that help us with our gait, terrible fatigue, sometimes terrible depression. And it's difficult to actually get out and do that exercise. So sometimes we can talk about other just activities of your daily living that can help you move and get around and provide some flexibility, some muscle movement. So we really recommend that exercise and lifestyle physical activity. So what do you mean by that? So it's important to get help from our PT and our OTs. Some patients maybe haven't had an exercise routine before. So reaching out to your PT and OT is really helpful because they can assess you, they can assess your mobility and any disability that you may have, and they can tailor a plan that's going to work really well for you to get you strong in the muscles that need to get stronger and flexible in the muscles that have become perhaps stiff. Understand the impact of comorbidities and your symptoms. So what do we mean by that? So let's say you're suffering from depression or fatigue. Sometimes that might be a barrier to getting out and having your exercise or your movement or your stretching. So really understanding, okay, these are the things that I feel, these are the things that are holding me back. What are the tips and tools that I can do to move past that? Gradual, safe progress. So I always tell my patients, if you've never exercised before, start slow and start small. So 5 minutes a day. So every day for 5 minutes, you're going to go for a walk, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and gradually build up so that your body gets used to that, progress. And seeking professional support. So sometimes the exercise is going to be with a physical therapist or occupational therapist that's going to be assisting you in having these impactful exercise and lifestyle physical activities. Next slide. So here we have some different barriers and facilitators, right? So definitely physical environment, depending on where you live or depending on where your mobility or disability in gaits, etc., that could be a barrier. Social environment, some patients have more support than others, depending on the support of your family, of your healthcare team, if you live in a rural area versus an urban area. These are all different barriers that you need to talk to about with your healthcare provider that can help you sort of manage and see what are the best ways that we can get you to move. Fatigue is a very important factor. Many of my patients tell me I am too tired to work out. And actually, one of the best treatments, and it's been studied in the literature, one of the best treatments for MS fatigue is exercise, which is sort of counterintuitive. You will likely feel more tired when you start, but as you build up endurance, the exercise actually helps mitigate the fatigue. So you want to really be able to see yourself individually and see what are the things that I can be able to do, set realistic goals, talk to your healthcare provider, your physical therapist, and come up with a plan. Sometimes it's scary to start these things. Having low confidence is also a barrier. But what I see is that once you do start it and you get that sort of burst of energy and you see the results and you see how your legs feel better and your strength is better, your depression is better, then you do sort of want to input more time into it because you're getting a good result. Cost is very important as well as time. Some patients have multiple responsibilities, limited resources financially. So again, it's not necessarily that you need to go to a gym and pay a gym membership. There are other things that you could do through programs, community centers, outside activities that you can do on your own. And now with YouTube and there's so many videos that are available. You have sitting exercise programs, you have light weight, many different options that you can have free videos online on YouTube. Next slide. So one of the main things that we see as barriers to exercise and physical activity are what we call our MS symptoms that are invisible. So a patient, you're not going to tell if somebody is fatigued by just looking at them. You may not tell that the person is depressed. You may not tell that they're in 8 out of 10 pain when you just see them with your eye, unless you sort of ask and delve into what's going on with the patient. So these are the things that really can be significant barriers to movement, to getting out and doing the physical activity. So we have different techniques that we use, self-help, support groups, sometimes medications, but really therapy and support are the mainstay of some of these treatments. Definitely depression and pain many times do require medications, and we work together with our colleagues from the mental health as well as pain and PM&R to help manage these symptoms so that you can be at the best that you can be, so that you can get out there and have a healthy lifestyle with your physical activity. Next slide. These are just some statistics. Pain is very common in MS patients, about 80%. Headache and migraines are also extremely common. That could be a barrier, just very disabling. We have seen patients that have back pain, leg pain, neuropathy type pain, so that burning pain that you may have in your feet that limits your ability to walk. So we recognize you want to work with your healthcare provider to see how you can minimize that pain as much as possible so that you can move as much as you can. Fatigue sometimes can be misinterpreted as depression or lack of motivation. MS fatigue is one of the most disabling features of MS, and it can be seen in up to 90% of patients. Many of the patients, 50 to 60%, have described their fatigue as their worst MS symptom, unable to work, unable to get out of bed, unable to get that physical activity and very impactful. Next slide. So mood changes, it's another very common rates of depression can be up to 3 times higher in patients with MS compared to general population. And about half of all of MS patients at some point in their disease process will have depression. Anxiety and stress are also very common in MS patients, and that could lead to increased stress and increased worry, and can also be a barrier to certain physical activities. Next slide. So along with physical well-being, we also have, again, what we talked about a little bit, nutrition. There's lots of barriers to eating well. I find the majority of barriers in my patients and myself is time and cost. Typically, financially, fast food is less expensive than maybe food that's a little bit healthier. Vegetables, fruits, salads, lean proteins, complex carbohydrates tend to be more expensive. So that's a big barrier, is cost. And then lack of time is another big barrier that I find. I recommend meal prepping, perhaps sharing with a friend or a family member that also wants to meal prep, and you can share the responsibility. Perhaps you do 2 nights, they do 2 nights. So between the two of you, you've already covered 4 nights or 4 days of meal prep. Lack of understanding of what are the nutritious foods that we need to nourish our bodies, for what's good for our muscles, what's good for our nerves, what should I be eating, what should I not be eating. Sometimes there's lots of foods that are packaged in packaging that looks healthy, looks green, looks appropriate, and sometimes you need to read the label because that actually may not be healthy for you. Having mobility issues, weakness in the arms or the legs, that can also be a barrier to being able to cook food that's healthy for yourself. And also the fatigue and depression. You may not have energy to have the ability to cook. And then, of course, access, depending on where you live, depending on cost, etc. It might be difficult to obtain these sort of healthier foods. Next slide. So how do we eat healthy and maintain cultural traditions, right? So I am Cuban American, and I know culturally there is lard, very commonly used, which is pork fat that is used to cook in all foods. Even a food that some of my vegetarian friends may think is vegetarian, I said, probably there might be some pork fat in those beans. So I'm not certain that it's vegetarian. So how do we, make those beans delicious, but perhaps using a different oil that might be a little bit healthier? So olive oil. So the Mediterranean diet specifically has been shown to really help patients with MS, and there's some literature showing that it decreases brain atrophy and improves cognition and can improve mood. There's other diets that have been studied, but again, you could switch out your rice and beans, perhaps using a different oil, and then instead of switching the white rice, you can switch it for the brown rice. So those are just little tools, little swaps that you can make, so you can still eat your cultural food, but keep it a little bit on the healthier side. Next slide. So how do we communicate with our friends and family that we need to be moving and we need to be eating nutritious foods that nourish our bodies? So keeping open and honest communication. I always tell my patients, your MS drug is your drug, but your exercising and nutrition is your other. It's for your MS. It's not for looking cute at the beach. This is to help your brain health, to help your neurons, to help your axons. You want to nourish those body parts. So inviting your loved ones to the healthcare appointment so they can also hear your healthcare provider discuss some of these healthier complementary things to your medication, not just taking your DMT. That's very important, of course, but we want to supplement these things to have you be the best self that you can be. Attending support groups, discussing your treatment plan as a team, and problem solving together has been shown to help family and friends support you in this process. So maybe if your friend or your family member sees, oh, how important it is, they may say, okay, let's work out together. Let's meal prep together. So it's important to be open and honest and say, you know, maybe I shouldn't be eating this. It's not good for my MS. And they can be aware of the situation. Next slide. I think that might be the last one. Oh, one more. So fostering patient-centered care. What are the things that we can do together in that doctor-patient relationship that can help you succeed in the relationship and have the best course as possible? So you want to discuss your goals with your healthcare provider. Talk about your concerns with your provider. If the provider explains something that is difficult to understand, it's important for you to ask for clarification. Sometimes you may not feel comfortable, but we always want to make sure that what we're telling our patients is understood and we can clarify if needed. Questions on underlying assumptions about the treatment. So if they told me to take this medication, I'm assuming it's really safe, or I'm assuming it's not safe. You want to be able to ask for clarification and share your own knowledge and preferences with your provider so that they can, again, you want to build that rapport with your healthcare provider. You want to have that good relationship so that it could be an open and honest communication and back and forth exchange. And feel free to visit the National MS Society's Find Doctors and Resources webpage for any support that you may have in addition to this.